It's official. The federal government is stopping all grant payments to Harvard University, which means that Harvard, the university with the largest endowment in human history of $53 billion, that's billion with a B, is actually broke. Now, a lot of you probably think I'm just making that up, right? Because how could a college with a $53 billion endowment be broke? Well, the reason for that is that an endowment isn't a piggy bank. It's not like they have a bank account with a bunch of cash stored in it they can just pull out of whenever they feel like it. That money, that $53 billion, is really just the value of a bunch of assets they've invested in. And you can't just sell those whenever you feel like it. They have a bunch of real estate, they own a bunch of companies, and to sell those things, you actually have to find a buyer. So it can take a lot of time. So if the Trump administration right now cuts all the grants to Harvard, which they have, they are in a huge financial deficit. They have to make up that money. That's why Harvard has taken out over $8 billion in debt right now, even though in principle they have a lot of assets to back that up. And it's not just me saying this. Harvard's deans have announced that there will be long-term funding losses because of these kinds of cuts, because Harvard was receiving almost $1 to $2 billion a year, well over 20% of their budget, directly from the federal government. So once you turn that off, you can't just turn it right back on. It'll take decades to ever recover funding, even if the federal government changes its mind. But keep in mind, it's not just Harvard facing these kinds of cuts. Pretty much every school in the Ivy League and almost every major university in America is facing similar federal funding cuts. And this is going to have major implications on who they can accept and how much they can afford to give them in scholarships, as they all pull from their endowments to cover operating costs in the meantime. So what does this mean for you? Well, if you're applying to college in the upcoming few cycles, you should be adjusting your college list accordingly. You should add on a few colleges, maybe small private colleges and state schools that aren't nearly as dependent on federal funding as a lot of the big name and Ivy League schools you guys may have applied to in the past. Make sure that you have a few options on your list that can either give you a strong scholarship or where you can at least pay in-state tuition to make sure that you can afford attending once you actually get in. That said, the situation is still unfolding, so leave your questions in the comments, and once I have more information, I'll do a part 2 to follow up.